Hi, welcome. On this video, I'd like to take just a couple minutes to respond to a question I received regarding e-collars as a secondary tool. And this is a good question. I just want to elaborate on this from a relational perspective. I talk about, focusing in on promoting change in and through the person. That really has a lot to do with it within the context of how certain devices and tools set that up. Just really keep that kind of in your back pocket whenever I'm talking about using certain things. It's about how they promote change at that level. So the focus shifts, therefore. Everything, so when you're, so just understand when you're approaching training that way, when you really understand, how change sets up relationally through this connection with changing the perceptions of the dog and the method itself with doing that, okay, and again changing how people think, how that's promoted. So you see certain things happening through the relational changing method, or what I refer to as the script. The devices all need to follow that same path. So certain devices will take a certain position. Now here's an important point to understand. Say for example, this is why if there's trainers that have pivot off of devices and have done that for a very long time, they've kind of dovetailed into a certain approach and using, say, remote collars at a high level right from the beginning. This is part of this issue about understanding how this sets up. These trainers, or if someone wants to, approach training differently, the right way, and really understand how this all sets up, and this issue about devices and the roles they play, you have to strip all that stuff away. I mean, for a period of time, to understand, you have to get right down to a flat collar. Don't get me wrong, I'll talk about this thing about secondary devices and getting down to certain devices and how to do it smart. So again, this is the example I'll talk about secondary devices. For example, I won't use a pinch collar, okay, because that's just not a good tool to set up change. I will go down to what's called a choke chain, or I call it a pressure collar, at times, especially initially. Okay, so for example, if say a person has a dog, say a pit bull, or a very a dog that has a lot of control, I'm not going to switch that person. That person's maybe using, say, a pinch collar, and therefore they have physical control but not relational change happening. I'll switch them over to a choke chain, or what I call a pressure collar, so that they're not going to be totally off balance. Okay, even as the script's coming online, and through that collar, you can still create moments. Okay, now I want to talk about this. It's not the typical crank and yank type of stuff that you're going to see people doing. That's not. These moments are happen ahead of the curve of the mind of the dog. So it's proactive that way. So and even saying that, the tool and this is the point. This is why I say we're stripping everything away. You become the system. Okay, which means that how change is promoted, especially through trainers, you become the standard. So, and you're doing that with other people. So whatever, and this is the important point, change happening at that level, whatever tool the person's using, therefore you need to switch over to a flat collar because it becomes too powerful, which means that how that manifests through that tool, because it's about the personality type of the person, it becomes too much for the dog. Okay, so it's all about understanding these dynamics. But again, talking about certain devices taking a secondary role. So when I talk about remote collar taking a secondary role, what I'm specifically referring to, there's a place for a remote collar. I'll use it specifically for the crate. And this is when dogs are holding a lot of control, and it's manifesting through these elevated states, highly charged states. And so even excessive barking behaviors, it's happening inside the crate. The dog's really, barking like crazy. And this is where, again, looking at a tool saying, well, I need to get that back. So, for example, you might be living in an apartment situation where, the HOA or the police are, are actually able to get kicked out. You need to get that barking behavior back. But again, or the dog is really into this high elevated state where in the crate you say, wow, that dog is has bad intentions. Okay, so in that context, a remote collar will be used, but I want to make the point. I'll keep it down to a vibration level. Okay, and therefore, but here's the thing. Okay, because of how the script sets up. Okay, how it promotes change, how the dog perceives that, the person through the relational methods. What it does, it changes the context of, even in this, of the remote collar as a tool. In fact, what happens is it makes more sense to the dog. Okay, just understand that because of how the method itself covers off. So therefore, that tool is more effective, and that tool is going to be more effective and go away quicker. So everything's a means to an end here. So again, the remote collar, yeah, I'll use it for a specific reason, and it'll fade out. Okay, because again, everything changes, so it changes everything. But again, the tools themselves, how they're used, even when I talk about the pressure collar, again, I'll use that as usually within the first, especially the first few days or whatever, and you'll see me using. I'll use it sometimes. I might have to use it a little more. If a dog is really, trying to push forward hard, I'm going to have to get that state of mind back. But what I'm doing is I'm assessing. As soon as I get that, a certain level, that state of mind back, then, I'm switching right over to the flat collar. But that's always the goal, is about how you use tools, understanding that it's not about the tools, okay? It's about the person. It's really, getting people that level to understand how the context of tools. But again, my big point here is people can't get that, especially if you're a trainer, until you strip it all away, until you really seek out to get to that level for a period of time and understand, and then it changes everything. So, so anyway, that's a take on tools. I talk about secondary tools. They're very specific to what my goals are. But, it's because, again, the method itself, you need to get in that crate. You have to have that level of communication to get that state of mind interrupted, to get that back. But again, everything makes more sense once you apply the relational method properly. It's how it changes people, and then change the context of those devices, how it the perceptions of that, how it sets up. But again, the best tool to use, always going towards a flat collar. But again, it isn't about a fanatical thing here saying, well, the flat collar, I'm going to not use, I'm just going to let this dog, pull this person down. Again, I see that, hey, you know what, it's just common sense. What tool am I going to use to help to control that dog, get that dog into the staging area, and then I can start to set up moments. And then here's the thing about even, the tools such as the choke chain. It'll be used more often in certain situations where, say, out in areas where the dog is, you need that control, especially at first. But the dog will be, both collars will be on that dog. I'll say, well, keep the, you need to keep the flat collar on and the choke chain on the dog. So you can switch back and forth a little bit, but the switching back to gain, switching over to the flat collar, it's going to happen more, say, inside the house, in controlled areas, so that you can really, you don't have a fear of that dog pulling you down. You're doing a circle method, doing certain things to really, invest in the method to get to a point so you can switch over. So again, everything has a sequence, so to speak, very intentional. So it's all designed so that you have a kind of formula that you go by, but it's always about changing people. It's about how change is promoted that way. So anyway, that's the thing on devices, on those devices, I say secondary devices, and, looking at them certain ways so that, you can maximize change fast. But again, through how the methods, the relational methods set up, to do that changes, it makes everything different because it's about the person becoming the system, I say, and then that's where you get a dog off leash. So anyway, thanks for watching.